move.
They fired me, effective immediately. The words came from across the polished conference table, delivered with the casual authority of someone accustomed to ending careers before lunch. Victoria Hayes, the newly appointed CEO of Consolidated Transport Networks, didn't even bother looking up from her leather-bound portfolio when she said it. Mid-30s, sharp blazer, the kind of confident posture that comes from elite business schools and zero operational experience. She was flipping through spreadsheets, red pen in hand, circling line items like they were personal offenses. I sat there, hands folded on the table, watching her perform what she clearly thought was decisive leadership. "Transition will be immediate," she continued, still not making eye contact. "We're bringing systems management in-house, more efficient, better cost control." Behind her sat two people I didn't recognize, a nervous-looking woman from HR clutching a tablet, and a younger man in an expensive suit who had consultant written all over him. No one from operations, no one from the original leadership team, just Victoria and her imported expertise. She finally looked up, her expression somewhere between bored and irritated, like I was wasting her valuable time by still being in the room. "Before you go," she said, tapping her pen against the portfolio, "hand over the logistics system, all of it. Access credentials, source code, documentation. We'll need everything by end of business today." The room went quiet. The HR woman shifted uncomfortably. The consultant stopped typing on his laptop. I didn't move, just sat there, keeping my expression neutral, letting the silence stretch. Victoria's eyebrow raised slightly. "Is there a problem?" I smiled, calmly. The kind of smile you give someone when you know something they don't. "I'm afraid I cannot," I said. Her pen stopped mid-tap. "Excuse me. The system," I continued, my voice steady and professional, "it's not yours to own." Victoria's confident posture shifted, just slightly. A flicker of confusion crossed her face before the corporate mask returned. "We paid for development," she said, her tone sharpening. "That makes it company property." I shook my head slowly. "You paid for operational access, not ownership. The distinction is outlined clearly in Section 7 of your service agreement." The consultant leaned forward, whispering something to Victoria. She waved him off, eyes locked on mine now. "This is absurd," she said. "You can't hold company infrastructure hostage." "I'm not holding anything hostage," I replied. "I'm simply clarifying what you legally control, which, as of this moment, is absolutely nothing." What Victoria Hayes didn't know, what her consultant and her HR team and her entire C-suite restructuring plan had completely missed, was that the logistics system running Consolidated Transport's entire operation across 6 states wasn't software sitting on their servers. It was custom-built infrastructure I owned personally, licensed for their use, controlled from hardware they'd never seen. And when they terminated my contract 3 minutes ago, they just disconnected themselves from the only thing keeping their freight network from collapsing. In 48 hours, that oversight would cost them everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and show you exactly how a transportation systems architect with 26 years of experience got fired by someone who thought logistics was just an app on a dashboard, and how one overlooked contract clause turned a confident termination into the most expensive mistake Consolidated Transport ever made. Before we go further, if you've ever watched someone with no understanding of your work try to take control of what you built, you already know this feeling. If this story pulled you in, hitting like and subscribe keeps these coming. And wherever you're listening right now, home, work, commute, take 1 second to ground yourself. Look at something real. There's a world beyond conference rooms and corporate power plays. Now let's go back to where this really started. My name is Jonathan Rivers. I'm 51 years old, and I've spent the last 26 years building transportation logistics systems from the ground up. Not the kind of work that gets you featured in tech magazines or invited to innovation conferences. The unglamorous kind. The kind that keeps freight moving, schedules synchronized, and compliance officers satisfied. I started in the Army, running supply chain operations in places where a single routing error could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Learned early that logistics isn't about dashboards and data visualization. It's about understanding how physical systems interact with information networks in real time, under real pressure. After I got out, I spent 8 years working for a major freight company before going independent. Built my first custom routing system in 2009 for a regional distributor in Ohio. Word spread quietly through industry circles, the kind of reputation that gets you calls when someone's operation is falling apart and they need someone who actually understands the machinery behind the metrics. I don't have a fancy website. Don't post on LinkedIn about synergistic solutions or digital transformation. My clients find me when their networks are broken and conventional consultants have failed. That's how I ended up working with Consolidated Transport Networks 5 years ago. Robert Chen, their VP of operations at the time, called me on a Thursday afternoon. His voice had the tight edge of someone staring at disaster. "Jonathan, we just failed our third compliance audit in 18 months, he said. Regional Transportation Authority is threatening permit suspension. I need someone who understands how this actually works, not another consultant who learned logistics from PowerPoint slides." Robert was old school, came up through the ranks, spent years on loading docks before moving into management. He understood that behind every clean dashboard and automated report, there's physical infrastructure that has to function flawlessly. When I walked into their main facility that first day, the chaos was immediately obvious. Trucks queued at loading bays with zero coordination. Drivers sitting idle while dispatchers made frantic phone calls trying to figure out routing. Traffic backing up at the main gate because their signal timing system was running on default patterns from 2003. "We've got 5 different software platforms that don't communicate," Robert explained, walking me through the warehouse floor. "Dispatch uses one system, loading crews use another, traffic control is basically manual. Every shift change, we lose 90 minutes just trying to synchronize operations." I spent the next 22 months building them a real system, not some off-the-shelf package that kind of works if you bend your entire operation to fit it. Custom routing algorithms that learned the specific traffic patterns of their 6-state corridor. Signal synchronization that actually integrated with municipal infrastructure. GPS tracking that monitored every vehicle in real time and adjusted schedules dynamically. 200,000 lines of code. Every algorithm, every database structure, every hardware interface, built from scratch and tested until it ran without failure. The results were immediate and measurable. 0 missed delivery windows. No dock congestion. Trucks flowing through the network like precision machinery. State auditors came through twice after implementation and found nothing to flag. Robert would send me detailed quarterly reports, not corporate thank you notes, but substantive analysis of efficiency improvements and cost reductions. He understood what he was paying for, and more importantly, what he was getting. The contract was crystal clear because I'd learned this lesson the hard way years ago. They leased operational access to my system. I retained complete ownership of all source code, algorithms, and infrastructure. Robert signed without hesitation because he understood the difference between using something and owning it. For 5 years, everything ran perfectly. Monthly payments arrived on schedule. The system performed exactly as designed. Robert would call occasionally with questions about optimization or capacity expansion, always respectful of the boundaries we'd established. Then Robert retired. Victoria Hayes arrived 3 weeks later with her MBA from Wharton and her leather portfolio that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her first communication wasn't a greeting or introduction. Subject line: third-party vendor expense analysis. The email was pure corporate optimization language about recurring cost structures and operational dependency reduction. My invoice hadn't changed in 5 years. Same amount, same delivery schedule, same scope of work. But Victoria saw a line item on a budget sheet and immediately assumed there was fat to trim. I replied professionally, attaching the original contract and a summary of system performance metrics over the past 60 months. Her response came back within 90 minutes. Need to schedule comprehensive review of all external service dependencies. Please prepare full documentation for internal evaluation of operational systems. Operational systems. That phrase told me everything I needed to know about Victoria Hayes. She was the type who thought complex technical infrastructure could be understood by reviewing slide decks and reading executive summaries. I started preparing, not documentation for her evaluation, but the contingency plans I'd need when this conversation went exactly where I knew it was heading. 4 days later, the email arrived that confirmed my suspicions. Subject line: System Architecture Documentation Request. Victoria wanted a complete copy of the system for internal assessment and potential transition planning. She didn't want to review our service agreement. She wanted to take my system and eliminate the monthly payment. I sent back a response that was technically accurate and deliberately unhelpful. Happy to provide all materials included under your current operational license. Then I walked out to my garage workshop, sat down at the master control panel I'd built specifically for Consolidated System, and started preparing Victoria Hayes' education in the difference between access and ownership. The lesson was about to begin. 3 days after my documentation response, another email landed. Subject line: Intellectual Property Clarification. Victoria wanted written confirmation that all operational software logic belonged to Consolidated Transport Networks. Operational software logic. That's what she called 5 years of custom routing algorithms, traffic synchronization protocols, and real-time coordination engines. Like it was a commodity asset she could inventory and reassign. I screenshot the relevant contract clause and sent it back. Bold text, impossible to misinterpret. All system architecture, source code, design logic, and operational infrastructure remains the exclusive property of Jonathan Rivers, licensed for operational use only. No transfer, replication, or derivative development permitted without explicit written authorization. Robert Chen had understood that clause perfectly when he signed it 5 years ago. You don't buy a custom logistics system like you're purchasing office equipment. You license access to infrastructure that took years to develop and requires constant maintenance from the person who built it. Victoria's response arrived 6 hours later. We will be transitioning to internal systems management effective immediately. Final payment will be processed per contract terms. Thank you for your service. That was it. No discussion. No transition planning. No acknowledgement that she was about to disconnect the central nervous system of a 6-state freight operation. Just corporate speak for, "You're done, and we're keeping your work." I sat at my desk for a long moment, staring at that email. Then I walked out to my workshop. Inside that converted 2-car garage sat the physical control infrastructure I'd built specifically for Consolidated's network. Custom hardware interface with dedicated circuits for every major subsystem. Traffic coordination, dock assignment, route optimization, GPS integration, all of it flowing through boards I'd assembled and programmed by hand. Victoria Hayes had no idea that control panel existed. She thought the system was software running on Consolidated servers. She was about to learn the difference between a user interface and actual operational control. 6 days after her termination email, a calendar invite appeared. Systems transition meeting Friday 10:00 a.m. Eastern. No agenda. No context. Just a meeting title suggesting she expected this to be a simple handoff conversation. I joined the video call 3 minutes early. Professional appearance, clean button-down shirt, background showing my home office with my engineering certifications and Army service medals visible on the wall. Victoria logged in 2 minutes late, settling into her chair with the satisfied expression of someone who thinks they've solved a complex problem with simple cost cutting. A man from IT joined next, Derek Williams according to his screen name. Then a woman who looked fresh out of business school, tablet in hand, ready to take notes. Robert Chen was nowhere on the call. Not surprising. He'd probably advised against this entire approach, and Victoria had decided his operational experience wasn't relevant to modern business strategy. "Jonathan, thanks for joining," Victoria began, her tone suggesting this was routine administrative business. "We've made the decision to bring systems management in-house. Appreciate all your work up to this point, but we're ready to assume direct operational control." Assume control. As if clicking through dashboards was the same thing as running the underlying infrastructure, I kept my expression neutral. "You're terminating the license agreement, correct?" "Correct," Victoria said, leaning back like she expected praise for her decisive leadership. "We'll need complete handover of all code repositories, system architecture documents, and backend credentials. Standard transition process." Derek nodded along. The note-taker typed something into her tablet. "They had this choreographed like routine vendor management. You're not licensed to access the core infrastructure," I said calmly. "Your agreement covers operational use of system outputs. You never purchased ownership rights." Victoria's confident smile faltered slightly. "We paid for development of this system, Jonathan. That makes it company intellectual property. This is standard business practice." "You paid for operational access to a functioning logistics network," I replied. "You never bought the underlying technology. That distinction is outlined explicitly in Section 7 of your contract." She glanced off camera, probably pulling up the contract on another screen. I waited while she scanned through language that Robert Chen had reviewed carefully with their legal team 5 years ago. "Look," she said, attempting to regain control, "we understand there might be some technical nuances here, but we're prepared to handle operations internally going forward. Just provide whatever documentation you have so we can maintain service continuity." "I'll provide everything you're legally entitled to receive," I said. "Nothing more." The silence across the video call was sharp. Derek looked uncomfortable. The note-taker stopped typing. Victoria's jaw tightened as she realized this wasn't going to be the smooth asset transfer she'd planned. "That'll be fine," she said curtly, trying to end the call quickly. "We'll expect full delivery by close of business today." I didn't respond, just sat there looking directly into the camera while she fumbled with her mouse, clearly wanting to disconnect before I could complicate her timeline further. The screen went black. I closed my laptop. Victoria Hayes thought she understood technology because she could navigate software interfaces and review quarterly performance reports. She had zero comprehension of the physical infrastructure, the custom hardware, the dedicated communication protocols, or the specialized knowledge required to keep it all functioning. She was about to get an expensive education. I walked out to my workshop and powered up the control panel. Every indicator showed green. Traffic nodes synchronized across 6 states. Route calculations updating in real time. Dock assignments flowing smoothly through the network. The entire consolidated transport corridor running exactly as I designed it. Then I started building Victoria's transition package. Professional-looking documentation with clean diagrams and impressive technical language. User interface screenshots showing dashboard layouts and data visualization panels. Everything polished and official, and completely useless without access to the underlying control systems. I spent 6 hours creating exactly the kind of deliverable Victoria expected to receive. Visual materials that would make her think she'd gotten what she needed to operate independently. Interface mock-ups with animated displays. System diagrams showing logical flow of operations. All of it disconnected from actual infrastructure. By 5:30 p.m., I had a comprehensive package ready. I attached it to an email with a single line. System interface documentation provided per contract termination. Backend infrastructure access not included per licensing agreement. I hit send and watched the message disappear into Consolidated's corporate email system, where Victoria would soon discover the difference between owning a control panel and owning the engine. Then I walked back to my workshop, sat down at the master control console, and placed my hand on the primary power relay. The real education was about to begin. The next morning, I drove to Harbor View Cafe like it was any other Friday. Small place on the water, good coffee, quiet corner booths where you could work without interruption. The owner, Margaret, had been serving me the same order for 4 years. Black coffee, no cream, no sugar, toasted rye bread. She nodded when I walked in, poured the coffee without asking, and left me alone with my laptop. I opened the administrative console and brought up the main operations dashboard. Every indicator glowed green. Traffic flowing smoothly through 93 synchronized intersections across 6 states. 1,247 trucks receiving real-time route updates. Loading dock assignments cycling efficiently through 38 warehouse facilities. Everything Victoria Hayes thought she now controlled was actually flowing through the custom hardware sitting in my garage workshop, 15 minutes away. At 9:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text message from Victoria. Having difficulty accessing route management interface. Please provide admin credentials immediately. I stared at the message for about 15 seconds, then deleted it without responding. At 9:52 a.m., I toggled the master relay switch. The map on my screen froze instantly. Every green indicator went gray. Real-time data feeds dropped to 0. Signal synchronization stopped mid-cycle. The entire consolidated transport network just stopped communicating. I took a slow sip of coffee and watched 5 years of perfect logistics coordination die in complete silence. The system didn't crash or throw error messages. I designed it to disconnect gracefully. No alarms, no warning indicators, no dramatic shutdown sequences. Just clean separation from all operational control. If someone tried to restart the user interface, it would load perfectly and display the last cached data, creating the illusion that everything was still working. But underneath, nothing was actually communicating with anything else. For the first 12 minutes, nothing appeared wrong to casual observation. Dashboard displays still showed green status indicators. Dispatchers looking at their screens would see normal traffic patterns and dock assignments. Drivers already en route would continue following their last received instructions, but no new data was flowing anywhere. I pulled up the live traffic camera feeds I'd integrated into the monitoring system. At 10:04 a.m., I watched a delivery truck sit at a red light that should have changed to green 45 seconds earlier. The signal timing protocol was frozen, unable to adjust for real-time traffic conditions. At 10:11 a.m., 2 trucks arrived simultaneously at the same loading dock. According to their onboard displays, both had valid assignments for Bay 12 at the Northern Distribution Center. The conflict prevention algorithm wasn't running. By 10:25 a.m., the ripple effects became visible across the network. Traffic backing up at 7 major intersections. Loading queues forming at warehouse entrances. Dispatch schedules showing everything on time and synchronized, but ground reality telling a completely different story. I refreshed my email inbox. Nothing yet. They were probably still trying to figure out why the route management system wasn't responding to login attempts. At 10:34 a.m., the first confused email arrived. Subject line, quick question data sync delay. Hey Jonathan, seeing some weird lag on dock queue updates. Can you take a look when you get a chance? Thanks, Kevin Martinez. Kevin was one of their senior operations supervisors, former Marine good instincts. He'd figure out what was happening eventually, but right now he was just seeing symptoms. I didn't respond. By 10:48 a.m., the emails were arriving every few minutes. Route data not refreshing. Signal timing problems at Western Gate. Multiple trucks showing same bay assignment. Still polite. Still assuming this was some kind of technical glitch that could be resolved with a quick phone call. At 10:53 a.m., my phone started ringing. Unknown number with Consolidated's area code. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call from a different number. Then a third. The panic was beginning. I pulled up the system connection logs and watched failed authentication requests hammering uselessly against the demonstration package Victoria's IT team was trying to operate as live infrastructure. Hundreds of failed handshake attempts. Every request bouncing back empty because there was no actual system behind the interface. They were trying to drive a semi-truck using only a photograph of the steering wheel. By 11:15 a.m., the situation had deteriorated significantly. Traffic gridlock at 9 major choke points across 3 states. Loading dock conflicts at 16 different facilities. delivery schedules falling behind by an average of 63 minutes across the network. And somewhere in a corporate office, Victoria Hayes was probably staring at user interface screens that still showed everything functioning normally, wondering why reality didn't match her data. At 11:22 a.m., an email arrived with red priority flags. Subject line: urgent critical system failure. Multiple operational conflicts. No response from routing controls. Doc assignments completely desynchronized. This is affecting compliance status and client contracts. Need immediate support. Please respond ASAP. Derek Williams, IT Director. The corporate politeness was cracking. They were starting to understand this wasn't a minor technical issue. I closed the email without reading the rest and checked the impact calculator I'd built into my monitoring tools. Conservative estimate: $230,000 in daily losses from delayed deliveries, missed schedules, and compliance violations. Real number was probably higher once you factored in customer satisfaction penalties and contractual breaches. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Emergency situation. Call immediately. I deleted the message. At 11:36 a.m., the phone rang again. This time the caller ID showed Consolidated Transport Legal Department. I declined the call and watched it roll to voicemail. Then another call from a blocked number. Declined. By noon, I had 53 missed calls and 29 unread voicemails. The 6-state freight corridor was experiencing what the military would call a cascading systems failure. Nothing was coordinating with anything else. Drivers were making navigation decisions based on stale information. Dispatchers were issuing conflicting instructions. Warehouse managers were trying to manually assign dock space, while their computers insisted everything was running smoothly. I opened a new document on my laptop and started typing. Emergency System Restoration Proposal Terms. Payment due via wire transfer before reactivation rate. 3 times standard monthly fee for immediate restoration service duration. 96-hour emergency window conditions. Full acknowledgement of service terms and intellectual property ownership. I attached the document to an email addressed to Victoria Hayes, Legal Counsel, and the Operations Director. Subject line: Emergency restoration services available. Then I hit send and ordered another cup of coffee. The education phase was complete. Now came the negotiation. At 12:43 p.m. the calendar invite arrived. Emergency conference call 1:00 p.m. Eastern, immediate response required. No polite language, no corporate pleasantries, just panic in capital letters. I joined the call at 12:57 p.m. Professional appearance, calm demeanor, sitting in my home office with my engineering certifications visible in the background. The screen filled with stressed executives in various stages of crisis management. Thomas Bradford, some kind of senior VP, joined first. Tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, the expression of a man who'd spent the last 3 hours in emergency meetings. Then came legal counsel, 2 attorneys, one taking rapid notes, the other reviewing documents on a second monitor. Kevin Martinez, the operations director I'd worked with during original implementation, appeared next. Former military like me, understood systems thinking. He looked exhausted but unsurprised, like he'd been expecting this conversation for weeks. Victoria Hayes was already in the call when I connected, positioned in a small window at the bottom of the screen. Muted microphone, tight body language that suggested she'd been removed from leadership of her own crisis. Nobody said hello. Thomas cleared his throat and launched straight into damage control. Jonathan, appreciate you joining on short notice. We're dealing with what appears to be a significant operational disruption. Our entire network is essentially paralyzed, and we need to understand our options for immediate restoration. I nodded once. Your service agreement was terminated yesterday. If you want operational access restored, the terms are outlined in my emergency proposal. One of the attorneys leaned into her camera. Jonathan, we've reviewed your proposal. Some of the financial terms seem disproportionate given the circumstances. Emergency response pricing, I replied. Standard practice when critical infrastructure fails during business hours. Kevin Martinez spoke up, his voice tight with controlled stress. "Jonathan, we've got 38 warehouses completely offline, traffic backing up across 6 states, compliance violations accumulating by the hour. Our insurance carriers are already asking questions." He glanced at something off-screen. "7 major customers have called threatening contract termination if we don't restore normal operations by Monday morning." Thomas jumped back in. "Look, we understand there may have been some miscommunication during the transition process, but we need to focus on solutions here. Can we discuss modification of the emergency terms?" "No." The single word hung in the digital space. No explanation, no negotiation, no corporate back and forth. Just a simple statement of fact. Victoria finally unmuted her microphone. "This is unreasonable, Jonathan. You're holding our entire operation hostage over a contract dispute." I looked directly into the camera. "You terminated my services and demanded handover of infrastructure you never purchased. I provided exactly what your contract entitled you to receive. Nothing more, nothing less." She started to respond, but Thomas cut her off with a sharp look. One of the attorneys tried a different approach. "Would you consider a modified payment structure, perhaps installments over a specified period, wire transfer only, full payment before reactivation?" Kevin leaned forward. "Jonathan, what's the timeline for restoration once payment clears?" 30 minutes, I said. "System comes back online immediately after I confirm funds transfer." Thomas looked at his legal team, then back at the camera. "We need 10 minutes to discuss internally. Can you hold?" I nodded. "I'll be here." They clicked into a breakout room, leaving me alone on the call with Victoria's muted video square. She stared at the camera like she wanted to say something. Didn't. I took a sip of coffee and checked my email. The emergency proposal had been forwarded to at least 12 different people in their organization. Finance department, legal department, operations, risk management, even their insurance carrier. Everyone trying to understand how a routine vendor termination had turned into a company-threatening crisis. 8 minutes later, they returned to the main call. Thomas's expression had shifted from desperation to resignation. "Legal is initiating the wire transfer now. Should complete within 45 minutes. Let me know when it hits my account," I said. 37 minutes later, my banking app chimed with an incoming transfer notification. "Payment confirmed. Amount correct. No complications." I walked out to my workshop, sat down at the master control panel and flipped the relay switch back to active position. Every screen in my house lit up with green indicators, traffic nodes reconnecting in sequence, route calculations resuming, dock assignments updating in real time, GPS tracking coming back online. The 6-state freight corridor came back to life like someone had just restarted the circulatory system of a major metropolitan operation. I returned to the video call where everyone was still waiting. "System is operational," I announced. "All services restored." Thomas nodded. "We appreciate the rapid response." "I didn't do this rapidly," I said evenly. "I did this according to the terms you agreed to." Nobody responded. Victoria's camera was still on, but she hadn't said a word since her hostage comment. I left the call without ceremony. For the next 72 hours, I monitored system performance from my kitchen table. Everything ran flawlessly. Traffic synchronized perfectly. No dock conflicts, no compliance issues, no missed delivery windows, and no communication from consolidated transport networks. No emails, no phone calls, no requests for system modifications. They'd learned to stay quiet. On Tuesday morning, a new email arrived from a different sender. Strategic Partnership Discussion, Revised Terms Proposal. From someone named Patricia Montgomery, VP of Strategic Operations. Someone brought in specifically to handle the aftermath without mentioning Victoria Hayes's name anywhere in the correspondence. The offer was substantial. 5-year exclusive contract with enhanced compensation. Priority consideration for future expansion projects. Professional language, respectful tone, explicit acknowledgement of intellectual property ownership. I read through it twice, then opened a blank document and began drafting my response. New terms, stricter protections, ironclad ownership clauses, no room for future misunderstandings about who controlled what, 3 weeks later, the signed contract arrived in my inbox, every clause exactly as I'd written it. No modifications, no negotiations, no corporate wordsmithing. Victoria Hayes's name was nowhere on the signature page. I closed my laptop and walked out to my workshop. The control panel hummed quietly, all indicators green, the 6-state freight network flowing smoothly under my direction. Word travels fast in logistics circles. By the end of the month, I'd received inquiry emails from companies in Chicago, Detroit, and Indianapolis, all asking variations of the same question. Are you available for systems development projects? I wasn't naive. They'd heard about what happened with Consolidated. They knew what occurred when someone tried to take custom infrastructure from someone who understood the difference between using something and owning it. That reputation was worth more than any marketing campaign I could have purchased. I opened my laptop and started typing a new document. 2025 Standard Service Agreement, Jonathan Rivers Transportation Systems, consulting the foundation was solid. Time to build the next level. If you're listening to this and you've ever built something valuable, remember this. Protect what you create before you're forced to defend it. Read every contract. Understand every clause. Know the difference between licensing access and surrendering ownership. And when someone tries to take what's yours, don't get angry. Don't get loud. Just smile calmly and say, I'm afraid I cannot. It's not yours to own. Then watch them learn the difference between confidence and control. Where are you listening from today? If this story meant something to you, I'd appreciate your thoughts in the comments. A like or share helps this reach someone who might need to hear it. And if you want more stories about quiet people who protected what they built, you know where the subscribe button is. No pressure, just an open door. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.